Are you suffering from a disc bulge or herniation that's been causing you pain and sciatica, and you're wondering what the signs are that it's healing? If you are, then this video has all the answers you need. Hi everybody, my name is Harlow and I'm the Over-Fifties specialist physio here at HT Physio in Farnham, and today I'm going to be revealing what the signs are that a disc bulge or disc herniation is healing. Now, before we dive into the content of today's video, please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel using the buttons below, because then you'll be the first to hear about new videos when they come out. Now that that's been said, let's talk about disc bulges and the signs of healing. Now, disc bulges in the spine, particularly when we're thinking about disc bulges in the lower back, are incredibly common. My estimations and the estimations from the literature show that at least 5% of people will have an episode of sciatica at some point in their lives, but there are many more people who have disc bulges that don't even have symptoms from them. Literally almost all of us have some kind of a disc bulge somewhere in the spine. If it's not touching a nerve, then we're not going to get symptoms. Let's have a quick look at the discs so we can see what a disc bulge actually is if you're not sure, and then that will help us to guide this discussion. So here is my model of the lowest part of the spine. We've got the two lowest lumbar vertebrae. We've got L5 right at the bottom of the spine, and then L4, which is just above. So if we had the rest of the pelvis here, we'd have the pelvis around here, and the sacrum, your funny tailbone, would be underneath here. Now, in between these two vertebrae, the white bones, we have a disc, and an intervertebral disc is a flexible structure that sits between every single one of the bones in the spine, and it allows us to bend, to twist, to lean backwards without any impact really on the joints in the spine. So it's very important that we have these discs. Now, the discs are basically a soft outer shell with a fluid center. And as we move through life, we can develop little weaknesses to the outer shell of these discs. Now, if the weaknesses get to such a point that they become weak right to the edge of the disc, we can end up with something called a disc bulge, which is when the fluid center of the disc starts to push towards the outside of the disc. And a bulge looks something like, you can see it on this side, that. So when you bend and when you move, the fluid center starts to push towards the back of the disc, and at other times it's where it should be. So a bulge is dynamic. It's typically not there all the time. It comes and goes, but every time it bulges, if you see this little yellow thing at the back here, that's one of your nerves. And if the bulge touches a nerve, it causes inflammation and pain running down the leg, because that is where that nerve goes. We call that pain sciatica, and it's typically pain that runs down the back or the side of the leg. Sometimes it runs down the front of the leg, and where it goes depends on which nerve in the spine is being pressed on. So that's basically a very rough rundown of a disc bulge and how it can cause sciatica pain. Now, most people who have a disc bulge that causes symptoms have a couple of different symptoms going on. The most obvious one, and the first one that people complain about, is sciatica, so nerve pain in the leg, which is what we just discussed. A lot of people also will have back pain. The issue is in the back, so often the muscles in the back can tighten up and their backs can also be very sore. Typically the pain starts in the back and goes down the leg. Now, this isn't the case for everyone, so if you just have nerve pain in the leg, that's quite common. Not everyone has back pain, but about 75–80% of people probably do have some back symptoms. Now, the other symptoms of a disc bulge can include weakness in the leg, which is a slightly more concerning symptom because it means that the nerve is actually being trapped, which means the signals can't get through. The other symptom people often get is pins and needles or numbness, which again suggests the nerve is trapped so that the nerve signals are not quite getting through to the skin, so that you lose some of your sensation. And there are also more severe symptoms, which we're not going to talk about today, but these include things like loss of control of the bladder and bowel and numbness in the private parts around the saddle area. Now, this is a much more severe condition, so if you have those symptoms, you should go straight to your accident and emergency room to get that checked out, because that constitutes an emergency. However, most people will just have the sciatica, the back pain, possibly the weakness, and possibly the pins and needles and the numbness as well. So, what are the signs that a disc bulge that's causing those symptoms are getting better? Well, there's a few different things you could look for. And the first one is pretty obvious. Okay, the first one is a reduction of pain in your leg. So that sciatica usually starts to get worse when the disc bulge starts to heal and the inflammation around the nerve is not quite so bad. But the reduction in the leg pain happens sometimes in quite a funny way. Sometimes it can be that the entire course of the pain just becomes less and less and less, which is obviously, a more obvious symptom that you're improving. But often the intensity of the pain is the same, but it doesn't quite spread down the leg as far. Okay, that is a good sign. So let's say that when you started off with your disc symptoms, your pain was going all the way down the leg right into the toes. Okay, that means that the nerve is being really badly irritated. Now, for someone who's getting better, what often happens is the pain is just as intense, but instead of going all the way down to the toes, it only now goes down to the knee. Okay, and you might think, well, it's just as bad, it's still going down the leg, but not going quite down as far is a sign of healing. So that's the first sign that the disc bulge is getting better. So pain either not as intense or just as intense, but not going down the leg quite so far. Now, the second sign that a disc bulge is getting better, and this is actually quite a confusing sign, is sometimes the back pain actually gets worse. Okay, I said that correctly. The back pain gets worse, not better. Sometimes it can actually feel more painful in the stages of disc healing. Now, the caveat is, at the same time as the back pain's getting worse, we should see the leg pain getting better. And we have a term for this in the industry. We call this centralization of the pain. It means that the pain is moving away from the leg. It's not referred pain as much as just being around the source of the problem, which is in the back. This was a concept that was come up with through, I think it was Robin McKenzie was the person who came up with this concept, and he saw this phenomenon with his patients that were getting better from sciatica. They'd often report that their back pain actually got worse at the same time as the leg pain getting better. So now we know that's the case. We can say, do you know what? If your back pain is getting worse, do not worry about it. As long as that leg pain is getting better, it's typically a sign of healing. Now, the next thing that should be getting better is if you had weakness in your leg, that should be getting stronger. You shouldn't have as much weakness. Now, I'm going to caveat this by saying if you have any weakness in your leg, it's incredibly important you get checked out by a medical professional, because if you leave that for too long, it could get worse, and it could be that the nerve is so damaged that it's not recoverable. So if you have severe weakness in one muscle group or several muscle groups in your leg, get checked out. But as the symptoms get better, you should notice the strength in your leg returning. So if you find that initially you couldn't stand on your tiptoes, or you couldn't walk on your heels, or you couldn't stand up from a chair because you couldn't trust your leg, those things should all feel better as time goes on. And if that is not improving within the first 1 or 2 weeks after the injury, definitely get checked out and get some individual treatment. Now, the next thing that people often don't realize when they have a disc bulge is if you've started off with numbness in your leg, if that changes to pins and needles instead, that's often a sign the problem is getting better. So that is the fourth sign of a disc bulge recovering. So if you started with numbness, if you had patches in your leg that you just couldn't feel, and then you start to get tingling and buzzing and itching and like a fuzzy sensation, that's a good sign, because that means that even though the sensation is not normal, now some of the signals are getting through. Okay, numbness is no signals getting through, pins and needles is some sensations getting through. That's how I think of it. So if you've had numbness, that progresses to pins and needles. Again, that's typically a positive sign of this injury healing. So generally, those are the things I look for. The final thing is another one that's reasonably obvious, but if you find that you can move your spine better, if you can bend further or lean back further or rotate further, that is also a sign that your disc bulge or disc herniation is healing. So watch for those things. And just to give you a recap of the things we would watch for when we're looking for whether or not a disc is healing. Number one is the sciatica in the leg reducing, either in how far it goes down or the intensity. Number two is often back pain getting worse. That can be a sign, but as long as that's happening with the leg pain getting better. Number three is that your strength comes back in the leg. So if you've lost strength, you find that's returning. Number four is that your numbness, you get your sensation back and you start to maybe get some pins and needles. And if you had pins and needles, you start to now get better sensation as well. So that's number four. And number five is the range of motion of your spine improving to back to where it should be. So those are the 5 symptoms we look for. Please, if you haven't already, leave a comment below and let me know if you found this video useful. I love reading people's comments. And if you haven't already, please pick up a copy of my book for more tips like this. It's called Thriving Beyond 50 and you can find it on Amazon using the link below this video. Anyway, that's all I've got for you today. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for watching. And I look forward to speaking to you on the next video.